there. I think Republicans are in a good place in trying to sell what will be a controversial, both policy-wise and difficult political plan with the guy from Janesville, who knows the subject. You heard him there with Phil Mattingly. He knows the obstacles ahead and the speed bumps ahead. Let's discuss what we just heard from the speaker, but also what we have now in this new proposal. I'll start here and just make our way down. What jumps out at you as they try to sell this as the biggest obstacle?
Well, I think there are definitely some things that seem like they are opening salvos that probably will not end up in the final bill.
That, to Speaker Ryan, was, can you guarantee that this will not end up becoming just a cuts bill? And I think this is going to be a really critical issue. One person in Washington who doesn't really mind, one Republican who doesn't really mind if this ends up becoming just a cuts bill, is President Trump. We know that he actually wanted to name this bill the cut bill. Obviously, Republicans ended up not going with that name, unfortunately. We would have had a lot of fun with that. But he is somebody who does not have sort of ideological beliefs, did not come to the White House, did not come to Washington with this being an ideological sort of crusade. The importance that a lot of House Republicans, Senate Republicans hold in making sure that some of these revenues are in there to offset these tax cuts. The president himself does not mind if those revenues are there to offset these tax cuts. And which is why I think Phil also asked a very good question of, has the president ever sort of offset or hindered your ability to get things done legislatively? And I think Paul Ryan, found a way to carefully answer that question, saying it's not a problem for the president to throw these ideas out there. But we'll see how the president handles this and if he ends up having the backs of these Republicans.
Right, that was very diplomatic on the speaker's part in the sense that, remember, the president called his House bill mean, the health care bill. And that's one of the challenges going forward. And you heard the speaker, Mary Catherine, say they don't think they're going to make the same mistakes as Obamacare. They've been on the same page. They've been working with the Senate and the president, trying to keep this on one foot. Let's read from the president. Here we have a reaction, first reaction from the president of the United States. I applaud the House Ways and Means Committee for introducing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is another important step toward providing massive tax relief for the American people. We are just getting started, and there is much work left to do. The special interests will distort the facts. The lobbyists will try to save their special deals. Roll that up for me, please. And some in the media will unfairly report on our efforts. But my administration will work tirelessly to make good on our promise to the working people who built our nation and deliver these historic tax cuts and reforms. The rocket fuel our economy needs, the president says, to soar higher than ever before. You're raising your finger. Go.
The word deficit's not mentioned in that statement. This president does not care about deficits. And to prove that point, unlike most every other major figure in his party, has pointedly said he doesn't want to touch entitlements. And so this is not someone who cares about deficits. And the point that I'm trying to make here, to sort of echo what MJ was saying, is that if this thing is stalled and is sort of hanging around the Ways and Means Committee or the Finance Committee and the Senate, this president is not going to tolerate that. He's going to push for a tax cut bill rather than some grand effort at tax reform that can't find the votes. Because, again, he's not focused on trying to find offsets to avoid increasing the deficit. He doesn't care about that.
But it is interesting. MJ makes a great point. The president's not ideological per se. He wants cuts. Most of all, he wants win. That's after we're 9.5 months in, and Obamacare is still the law of the land. It's not happening this year, the repeal. In his infrastructure plan, he never bothered to introduce. Those were two of the three things he said he would get done in year one. The only thing left that's possible now is tax reform. And yet, the president did have a big influence on this bill. You heard Phil try to put the question to Secretary of State, I'm joking, Speaker Paul Ryan, being diplomatic about the president's involvement. But if Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush or any of the other Republicans were president, this tax cut plan would have dropped that top rate. Without a doubt, would have dropped that top rate. That's Republican philosophy. If this were a week ago, this tax plan would have had some restrictions on 401ks to try to pay some of this bill. The president said, don't do it. It's not here. The question is, what's his role going forward?
Well, and I think stipulated he doesn't care about the deficit. Some of those things are good opening pitches to red state Democrats because they were things that they were worried about. 401k stuff is a bit of third rail and this kind of thing. Look, I think structural tax reform is a more responsible and fair and productive path. It's also way more complex and harder to sell than cut. Should have just slapped that name on it and gone with it, as MJ says.
No matter what it does, slap that name on it.
But a couple things. I noticed from this morning with the state income tax, people are worried about folks from high tax states like New York and New Jersey revolting. Even Democrats did not come out of the Ways and Means briefing enraged by the $10,000 cap. So that seems like somewhat of a good sign for them. And then red state Democrats, particularly in Trump areas where they are up for election, have signaled some willingness to listen and to play ball on this. And I think some of those changes from what we were hearing last week reflect an attempt to bring some of those guys on. It remains to be seen whether everyone can stay on the same page and actually make that sale. But there's stuff in here like the child tax credit and the standard deduction up that are easy pitches that people understand.
And yet, to your point, again, they say they won't repeat the mistakes of the Obamacare repeal debacle, but you do have the high tax state lawmakers still questioning this. They say that the property tax up to $10,000 is a bit of a concession to them, but not as much as they wanted. Now we have the House Ways and Means Committee. Then we'll have the full House. Think back to the Obamacare debate. Then it goes to that place known as the United States Senate. Or Marco Rubio, to your point about the child care credit, Marco Rubio has made this a project of his for some time. He tweeted this morning, House tax reform plan is only starting point, but $600 child tax credit increase doesn't achieve our and POTUS goal of helping working families. And that's an Ivanka Trump priority, the child tax credit. Again, it's early in the process. You expect everybody to plant their flags, but this is what happened to Obamacare. Medicare cuts couldn't be sold to Murkowski and to Collins. That didn't cut as much or pull back enough for the conservatives. Are we going to enter that same landmine?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that in the big picture, the Republicans